This is the Fujifilm X-T50. Time for a safari. That seat's wet. So this seems like the worst possible time to tell you about the headline specs. So inside we have a 40 megapixel X-Trans 5 CMOS HR sensor. It's the same one that we see in the X-T5 and the X-H2. And we have the X Processor 5. So the internals of this humble little camera are actually really, really great. In terms of the autofocus, it's being really good even in this terrible environment for shooting. And actually, it's the same as you get in the X-T5. So I would expect nothing less. I would expect this to be brilliant, and it is being. Even in lots of varied animals, lots of different wildlife, it's still understanding body, head and eyes.
On our right-hand side, we've got some red lectures, and that is Valerie, and the one on the left is Chris.
No idea if you can hear me, but this is a really good test of the ibis. 7 stops in the new X-T50.
But we will see the rest of our giraffes as we go out on the Open African experience, which we will be heading into very shortly.
So we've got the subject detect autofocus. Obviously I've got it on animal, and it is picking up really well with the giraffes. It's like taking in the body and the neck, and then it's switching to the eye when it can see it. Thank goodness for this ibis. You better like this. Like and subscribe. I don't normally ask, but I'm going to be sick. I swapped to the new 16-50, but actually I think I need to be back on the 100-400 here. One thing I really like about this 100-400 XF lens that I've put on the X-T50 is this tripod mount. So some of them, when I carry, like you're not going to carry it by the camera, right? Because that's a really heavy lens on a very, very light camera. But some of the tripod mounts don't have anything here, and it's really slippery. So I love when a lens has a little bit you can stick your thumb in. I know it's such a small thing, but it makes it so practical for carrying around. Oh my gosh, so cute. Now, the X-T50 can shoot up to 8 frames per second with the mechanical shutter, as could the X-T30 Mark II. However, this obviously has that 40 megapixel high resolution sensor. That's worth bearing in mind. The autofocus is also performing really well actually. So you've got the great subject detect. It's the same autofocus that we see in the X-T5, so you'd expect it to be very, very good. It's been working really well today with all the animals, but we wanted to try it on human animals. So here is our human IAF test. Do a couple of dynamic range tests here. It's quite nice for that actually. We've got the sun literally coming through the clouds as a white dot. We've got some really nice cloudscape here. We've got the fence. This is all very dark in the foreground and the tent. So let's see what we can bring back in post.
As these are brand new cameras, we could only edit the JPEGs, but even so, this image held a good amount of detail in the shadows and I was able to create a pretty balanced shot.
So we've spoken about stills, but what about video?
The X-T50 can shoot up to 6K 30p. You can shoot 422 10-bit internally, you've got F-Log giving you 13 plus stops of dynamic range, and you can even output ProRes RAW via the micro HDMI.
This is nice and it's new and it's pretty, but how does it compare to the X-T30 Mark II?
Along with the newer processor and high resolution sensor, the X-T50 adds IBIS and weather sealing to its feature set, putting it firmly between the X-T30-2 and the X-T5 in Fuji's lineup.
Still got a bit of white in that sky, but it has stopped raining, which is nice. Alongside the X-T50, Fuji are also releasing a new lens today, which is the XF16-50 f2.8 to 4.8 RLMWR lens. Now that means with that LM in there, that's linear motor for fast autofocusing. We've got an R, which is the aperture ring, which is nice, and WR, which is a good job today because that's weather resistance and we have really needed it. This is going to be the lens that's going to be replacing the 18-55 for Fuji. It's been going years, it's in so many kits. It's a lens I really, really like. But you do get a bit more flexibility with this on the wide end, being 16, and you lose a little bit on the long end, it's 50 rather than 55. So, you know, you've just got to think about what you need from a lens, really. The thing I really like about this is it is an internal zoom. So if you're going to be using it on something like a gimbal, that's really, really helpful because you don't have that weight movement putting things off balance. So that's something to think about. And it can focus nice and close. Being able to just walk around with this is so nice. It is small and handy. The new X-T50 weighs in at 438 grams, which is actually a bit heavier than the X-T30 Mark II. That sits at 378 grams, but they're both still really small and really light and easy to travel with. And if I was going on a city break somewhere, this is the sort of camera I'd want to be taking with me. He's got the carbon ceramics.
As the sun set with some fabulous colours, we wanted to test how the X-T50 performed in low light with that 40 megapixel sensor. This is how it looked side by side with the X-T30 at ISO 1600, 2500 and 3200.
In terms of design, the X-T50 is very similar to the X-T30 Mark II. They're almost identical, apart from this top dial right here. This is now a film simulation dial rather than a drive dial. Depending on the way you like to shoot, that'll be a positive or a negative for you. I think for a lot of Fuji shooters out there, they'll really like that. You've got a mixture of the most popular film simulations, and you've also got 3 custom settings as well that you can put to whatever you would like them to be. Personally, for this sort of shooting that we've been doing, I would have preferred the drive dial, but if I was walking around London, Brighton, if I was traveling, I'd probably be using those film simulations a bit more, and I would have probably preferred that. So I think it just depends on how you like to shoot. The other big noticeable design thing is the ports. So have pretty much the same ports. We've got a micro HDMI, we've got a USB-C, and we've got a mic/remote input. But that input is now the 3.5mm jack rather than the 2.5mm that was on the X-T30 Mark II, because before you had to use basically like a little adapter. You don't have to do that anymore. All in all, first impressions, really liked it. IBIS was great, image quality was fantastic, AF worked really, really well. It's nice and small, even attaching it to a 100-400, although it was front heavy, it didn't feel unusable. Do I want it over the X-T30 Mark II? Personally, I really like the drive dial on the X-T30 Mark II, but the IBIS in this and that newer sensor and processor, I'd be torn. I'd have to think, maybe do some more shooting to see which one I ended up falling in love with. But both of them for me, nice, small, compact cameras, great image quality, and Fuji are the absolute best at making sure their technology in their flagships moves down through their range of cameras, and I love that about them. If you've got any questions, make sure to pop them in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the Fuji range, on this camera particularly, and maybe even that new 16-50 that we showed off in this video. But for now, a massive thank you for watching. Hope you join us in the next video from MPB.